Hello, my name is Sean Sullivan, and this is the November 2nd edition of the SIG CLI biweekly meeting. Looks like we have a pretty short agenda today. And let's go directly into the announcements, which is we are a week and a day, or actually 1 week exactly away from the code freeze. So things are going to get pretty backed up. So earlier is better. Does anybody else have any other announcements before we move into topics? I think today's going to be a pretty short meeting.
An important thing about the code freeze date is different depending on where you are. So make sure to double check the date. But if I remember correctly, it's actually on the 8th.
It's on the 8th?
So the next Tuesday. But if you look at the UTC, it already goes to the 9th. But in general, the date is set as end of day Pacific. I think it's like 6 p.m. Pacific, which translates back to 9th of UTC. But I'll give you a link, double check. I can't remember off the top of my head, might be wrong, but that's what it usually has been in the past.
Okay, I'll if anybody can update that. 5 p.m.
Here's the link. 5 p.m. 8th Pacific, which translates to 1 a.m. UTC, which translates back to Wednesday 9th. So yeah, 8th is literally end of day Pacific, more or less, as a safe assumption for code freeze.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Mache. So there's the link there to get the exact time. I'll update the notes shortly after our meeting to make sure it's exactly correct when we will be freezing code. Does anybody else have any other announcements before we move into introductions?
If I remember correctly, the recordings from KubeCon from last week are either already online or are being actively uploaded. So if you want to check our update from last week, that should be already there or will be there. We'll make sure that that the links is in the notes as well.
Okay, another item that I will work on directly after. Okay, should we move on to introductions? Okay, this is the part of our meeting where we generally allow or encourage those who are here for the first time or for those who haven't been here for a long time to introduce themselves as a chance to meet your other SIG CLI colleagues. Is there anybody else who would like to introduce themselves? This is completely voluntary.
Hi. So I'm Henrique. I've been working with Go for a while I was in the CLI presentation at KubeCon, and I'm interested in contributing.
Oh, excellent. Yes, we met you at KubeCon. I'm sorry, but I've forgotten your name. Can you mention that again?
Oh yeah, Henrique.
Henrique. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks for coming. We will definitely, I'm pretty sure we will take you up on your offer to help out with the internationalizations for kube control.
I will go next. My name is Islam. I also attended your session at KubeCon and got interested in the projects and subjects that you brought up in this session, and would like to contribute.
Oh, great. Excellent. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. I'm based out of London in the UK. Yeah, and I work for AWS.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you.
So is there anyone else who would like to introduce themselves? Okay, why don't we move on to the topics? And the first topic was about an issue with the last applied configuration, but I believe that this may have been resolved. Is that correct, Katrina or Antoine? Or at least there's a understanding of the way forward.
I can talk if you want.
Go for it.
Okay, I will. Yeah, so we had a good meeting with Alex and Katrina, and we decided we're going to keep the last applied annotation in 126, since we are mostly trying to fix a bug and we wanted the behavior to stay the same in this specific release. For 127, we'll come up with a plan and a cap where we're going to decide what happens and what's next for the migration, probably a long-term plan to make server-side apply the default in kubectl. We want to give a chance to people to update at their own rhythm from client-side apply to server-side apply. And we sort of want to have like a feature where we can auto-detect if we should client-side or server-side apply objects. And so we want to discuss this and think about this, and we make a cap for 127. But for now, we wanted to keep these things as similar as possible to what we have today. Did I summarize that well, Katrina?
Yep, sounds right to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Is there any other last words on that before we move on to the next item? Okay, is Philip here?
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
So,
yeah, so I would like to start the discussion if people would be interested in having a standalone kubectl evict command. Like till now, we are only using evict when using drain, and this one is too broad. You can also use that one and to specify the labels. So if you label your pod with something and you specify the labels on the drain, you can use that to evict these pods as well. But it will also make the node unschedulable. So this would be much simpler feature, and it would basically just evict the pod you wish to evict. And like basically it could, yeah, I would like to ask if people are interested in having such command.
So in the past, when trying to add new commands, we've requested to opening an issue, and I see that you with Trevor already opened that. And then we ask to gather some input from the users and basically upload the issue. We didn't ever put a particular boundary about how many upvotes will guarantee including or not in a default, but definitely starting with a plugin like Sean writes in the comment is a way to go, because just having a plugin initially will allow you to play a little bit with this idea and maybe crystallize the functionality a little bit better. And in parallel, you would be able to gather some feedback from the users. As soon as um, you gather some feedback from the users, you would be able to decide if you want to as you will be able to provide that this is something that is broadly used and you have more or less crystallized use cases, you can return to us with this topic, and we can reconsider the decision for including that as a default. That was basically what we've been stating a couple of times in the past. I remember we promised to write it down eventually, and I'm pretty sure that we will eventually write it down. But that's what we've been talking about on and off on several occasions, basically. Does that somewhat matches your opinion or your approach?
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's wait if we find more feedback on this, and we can return to this.
Definitely. Whenever you have the plugin ready, feel free to mention that in this issue, so that people who will be looking at this issue can also try your plugin. Whether the plugin will be developed as part of OpenShift CLI or will be a separate binary, feel free to leave a comment there that for those who are interested in giving it a try, this is how they can get it. And then once we get sufficient feedback from users, we can reconsider. But definitely having that issue open there is a good path forward, because at least you'll have everything in a single place and then just link and keep the discussion there.
Getting the plugin into Crew can be a way to get some popularity for it, right? So it's another thing we suggest.
Yes.
Yeah, and we can. You should send an email to the mailing list too, to let people know we're looking for input there after you build it.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, okay. Let's start with plugin first and see how it goes.
I like this idea for what it's worth. I would have used that a couple times in the past if it had existed, personally.
Thanks, Philip, for putting so much effort into this new interesting command.
It was mostly Trevor who came up with this. So, but yeah, I would like to pick this up.
Excellent. So if we could wrap this topic up, we could move on to stand-ups with Brian. Is there anything else to say on the new evict command? Okay, Brian, it's all you on the internationalization survey.
Yeah, so I mean, nothing new really on the survey itself. At KubeCon, I did talk to Seoko Sun from SIGDocs, who is the Korean translating lead, and he seemed very interested in keeping translations in kubectl, which, I mean, I think we were kind of leaning towards that way, but it is something that that was, I guess, sort of on the table, like, hey, should we even be attempting something that is not done well? Talking to him and hearing some of the other, I went to a presentation where some Japanese users were talking about not kubectl specifically, but how a lot of people in their country, a barrier to contributing is that a lot of the information is in English and they prefer to have it in Japanese. And so I'm kind of realizing and hearing from different people that it is important to have translations. And so I guess what I'm coming around to is, I mean, we could still do the survey, but I'm kind of leaning towards let's open an issue in our repository in kubectl and track what needs to be done to bring translations to a good state. And so part of that means well, I mean, you know, maybe learning and communicating how the translations get updated. You know, it's not as simple as just editing a file. There's a script you need to run, a Python script, and then it does some pre-populates some files, and then from there you can do edit the translations. And so I guess what I'm thinking is some things need to be done, like perhaps automating that script so that it happens automatically, and then coordinating with SIG docs. So it seems like there's SIG docs has the people we need to do the translations, but they don't, at least talking to Sioko-san, that there's not it's not always clear how they can help us. So I think maybe part of it is communicating to SIG docs more. So anyway, I just said a lot there. Does anybody have any thoughts on localization or where we should go from here?
There was a discussion last week. I can't remember whether that was made official, but are you still playing with the idea that we would disable the translations which are some percentage incomplete? So let's say we would put some kind of a boundary of 50%, maybe 60, and we would say everything that is below is not on by default and would not work, so that people are not getting some outdated, because if something is below the threshold, most likely it is not being maintained, and there's a high chance that it is out of date for quite a while now.
Yeah. So as far as I can tell from when I was looking into it, there's not a risk that the translation will be wrong if somebody goes into the code and changes the English text, because the entire text is the key that it looks up the translation on. So as soon as that text gets changed, it no longer matches up to the translation. Therefore, the result is that it would just show the English instead of the translated text. But we did talk about having some threshold and saying, you know, we only want to show translations if we've reached, for a language, if we've reached, say, 50% of the text being translated or some threshold. It sounds reasonable. I don't know if it really helps anything to do that, or, you know, certainly I think it helps to have metrics and maybe watch them and say, look, you know, here we have a release coming up and here's the status. Maybe once every release, we have a report that says, here's the translation percentage for each language. And then it would be great to have this be totally automated, but, you know, maybe open an issue with in our repo and ping some people, whoever we know from SIG docs, or maybe there's a group of a mailing list or some way that we can communicate to them that we could use their help.
I think there's also a Slack channel, right? SIG docs localization effort or something like that, right?
Yes, there is, and they were. I did a few weeks back. I did post something on there, and they were pretty responsive. So I think they would help us for sure.
I'm wondering if this is almost like a CI signal thing. Like if the level drops below a certain threshold, we want something to start failing that we will then see no matter when in the release cycle it is, and then potentially drive issues off of that. I don't know if there's a way in the framework to have it not like fail arbitrary PRs, because that wouldn't be a good experience. But I guess that leads me to another thought, which is that, is there enough complexity in what we want to change here and needed collaboration with SIG docs that we should have a cap rather than an issue, or is that too heavy?
For the first part there, we can do an informing job, so it's not blocking for anything. So we can set up an informing crowd job there, and it can be part of the release pipeline.
As far as issue versus cap, I don't know. I feel like, so my first thought is to get it into an issue just so we can have a way to kind of track and record conversation in a text way, but you know, maybe it does warrant a KEP if it's I guess it depends. You know, who is interested in you know, using the KEP, I guess, as a communication tool. Maybe it's a better way to engage SIG docs or other people who might be interested in this and have feedback or input. I don't know. That's interesting. Any other thoughts on the KEP idea?
One thing that we talked about while we were at KubeCon was that like we can only do so much in terms of internationalizing the messages because some of the messages are coming from the server. And so going the KEP route might be a good way to try and get some cross-domain work done on it. See if we can get people from the server side to start internationalizing their error messages. I know that we assume that that would be very difficult to get moving, but maybe.
Yeah, we did talk about that, and that's kind of a hard problem. I mean, it doesn't mean we can't do it, but it's definitely another dimension to this problem. And then also when you throw in other external third-party messages, for example, that may be coming from, you know, somebody's CRD with a status or something. And technically all that could be translated, but coordinating that and getting everybody to do things in a way that makes it either so that we can translate it or they give it to us translated. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, maybe there is something that could be done kind of globally, not just in kubectl, but everywhere else that allows translations to occur at all levels. You know, maybe there's a header. I think maybe this was brought up. Maybe there's a header that we, you know, when we make a request, part of that is telling the API what language we are using and whether maybe that's the first step even, and then they can, you know, choose or not to respond in a translated response.
Yeah, I think if we were going to try and go that route, like the KEP would make the most sense than just a regular issue.
The other advantages I see is that there are like a few distinct sort of avenues of action that we could take here in terms of like improving the way translations are actually managed, improving the signaling that there's a problem, getting more translations from these different sources, like Marley's saying. And like it's easier to have distinct conversations about different facets of the topic when it's in that like PR format for the KEP than on an issue that might have like cross-cutting conversations actually about different things. I know we have a perennial issue with the KEP template not really addressing our concerns as well, but there are some sort of sections to it that could be potentially useful.
No, yeah, I think that's a great point. The conversation ability is going to be better in a KEP. And
Brian, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, you know, this issue is not like an emergency issue that we need to fix immediately. So I mean, I feel like maybe it is well suited for a KEP because it is something that we can kind of take a little bit of time and make sure that we're doing things right. And I guess it doesn't preclude us from doing some, you know, fixes to the current, like, you know, we can still, while the KEP's going on, we can still try to, you know, coordinate with SIG docs and have them use the existing mechanism to update our translations and improve them. But to build something that is kind of like going forward is going to be easy and sustainable, that's where the KEP comes in, I guess.
Brian, did you know what the next steps were for this survey that you have up here in this issue?
Well, no, I don't. Actually, I created the survey. I have not like pinged anybody or anything. I feel like there's probably a group I need to say, notify and say, hey, I created this survey request. I mean, if you want to click into the survey request and look at it, I'm not sure how much the questions are still relevant as far as, I mean, it would be interesting to know, but there's probably, oh, there's a link. So you scroll down a little bit more, there's their link to draft. Yep. So it's just like 5 questions, I think. What language do you use? Whether you're happy with it, whether it's important to you. And then number 4 is kind of the main thing that we kind of want to know is like, hey, if it's not complete, is it still helpful? I don't know. And so I guess that's the question, the main question. But I'm not even sure what we would do with that answer.
I think we should definitely send it out. I saw someone commented on the issue there. They said we should add a not applicable prefer English option. I'll ping SIG Contrib-X and see what the next step is for you there.
Okay.
If we had a KEP issue, we could potentially link it with that last question there. So we have like people, giving people like a direct avenue to like join in.
Eddie, when you said a not applicable prefer English, you mean in question 4 or?
Yeah, I was in the comments for the issue in the community repo.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking that we would bucket I don't know what, I guess it depends on how we get the responses, but we would probably, I was thinking that we would bucket them based on what people's language is on the first question. And then obviously, like if you chose English as your language, then question 4 doesn't really apply. But we could put that on there too. It's probably not a bad idea. Maybe makes reporting a little easier.
Yeah, I would think that would make the data that we have a little bit more useful.
Yeah, and there might be another dimension to this that, like, if just because English is not your primary language doesn't mean that, because maybe there's still somebody that would say not applicable. I prefer English. Maybe they're, for whatever reason, they're used to using tools in English, even though that's not their primary language. So maybe that still makes sense to put that there. Yeah. And so I think the timing on this, then Katrina's idea of, hey, this might be a good way to drive people to the KEP to comment and help us, with ideas there. So maybe we could coordinate this survey with when the KEP is created. That way it, helps us get the most useful information possible. Should I take a crack at creating a KEP for this? Is that a good place to start, I guess, after this meeting?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. And maybe the folks who were interested in joining the SIG with the internationalization effort could be collaborators for you on that one.
Okay. Was there anybody in particular that was interested in that topic? Anybody here on the call, I guess, or anybody else that I should make sure to include on?
I don't know if it'll help at all. I'm a native Hebrew speaker, so if you do get some interest in Hebrew, I can probably try and help out on that effort. So yeah, feel free to like ping me and let me know if like out of that survey, if there's any request for Hebrew, I can probably help on that.
Okay.
Would you be interested at all in the more generic topic of just making the system work well?
Did you say that again? Sorry. Interested in what?
Yeah, so like we have a problem with specific translations not being adequate, but what the KEP is going to tackle more generally is that the system we have for managing translations and flagging when they're inadequate and updating them and all that, like the system behind the internationalization is not working super well for us. So the idea is that we need folks who would use internationalization, so they have opinions about it and ideas for how to make the system better, to help Brian out with the effort in general. Would you be interested in that aspect as well?
Honestly, I don't have much experience in that area, but I can try. Sure.
Interest and enthusiasm is just as important as experience in these things.
Cool. Yeah, sure.
I also can help with this. In the past, I've worked a little bit on a tool to help translation. So
great.
Okay. Is that Henrique who mentioned that? I'm going to add it to the notes. Okay. Yep. I didn't get
Moshe, sorry. Yeah, I can put him in there.
So Brian, I've attempted to keep some notes for these discussions, but if you'd like to update them, if they're inaccurate or there's other information that you want to add to those notes, please do.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, it looks like we might get around 25 minutes back, unless there are any other issues that we would like to address before we call it a wrap.
I meant to put this on the schedule, but Tim had a question. I'm pretty sure that I know what the answer is, but I just wanted to double check. Mache, you're the one that closed the associated PR with this. They basically just want to have config map secret be able to be used with kubectl create, and where did it go? Somewhere in here. There's I think it's like the last thing. Yeah, here. And
We want to label flags, is it?
Yeah, so hold on, let me scroll back up. So basically they want to be able to set a label flag for create, which we don't have currently. And the answer that Mache gave was basically like, this is not the intention of create, which is basically what I thought when I saw it. Tim posted in the chat too. I just wanted to double check and see if that's where everybody's still at a year later from the last time this was updated.
Yes, the majority of the create command should be very simple to get you started. If you're looking at more sophisticated users, you probably shouldn't be using create in the first place. So probably apply would be where I would be pushing you forward. If you want to stick with create, on the other hand, I'll probably suggest using create pipette through invoking dry run to a file, and then pipe it through label command. You can basically achieve the same thing. It should work. If piping does not work, that's definitely something that we should do. Yes.
Yeah.
And then you can only after that operation, you will be able to create those on the server. It should work similarly with annotate, with labels. But in general, yeah, I would probably push people towards the apply flow where you have the files kept and kind of a Git repo. But yeah, it's better to have a few simple composable commands rather than one which will allow you to do a ton, but then to get whatever option you need, you need to read through 3 pages of that command. That's something that we used to have with run, and we tried hard to get rid of.
Yeah. Okay. I'll also just send them a link to, well, whenever it's up, but the part of the video for the presentation about the difference between the different commands that we have.
Yes. I'm happy to answer. If you send me the link over the slide, I can provide additional details.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is sort of related to a topic that we discussed at, I don't know, maybe 2 meetings ago, where someone wanted to add like a new subcommand to create for a different resource type. Like in our FAQ, I just wanted to link to the issue that we pointed that person to as well, which is the sort of like plan to redo how this works so that there would be sort of, well, at the resource level, more flexibility that they're looking for without requiring us to actually have support for every single thing.
Yeah. Also, in parallel to that, we're working on getting the opening to create subcommands for plugins until we get the full-blown generation mechanism. We'll try to open up, create plugins, because currently we do not allow subcommands or any of the built-ins, subcommand plugins. But we discussed it a couple weeks before, a couple meetings before, that we will most likely open it up for create only, because a bunch of folks has been approaching me about having the ability to create any random CRDs for their resources, CRs. I mean, yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Cool. Great. Thanks for bringing that up, Marley. Are there any other issues that we would like to bring up? Did we bring that one to a close? Okay, I think we're gonna get about 20 minutes back, unless there's any other issues that we'd like to address. Okay, I'm stopping the recording.